we raised a $12.5 million Series A and a $33 million Series B. And both times at the negotiating table, I said, we don't need this. Like we can keep building and like I'm totally fine. And that makes them want you a lot more. Yeah. And so that's why we've gotten great terms and great valuations on both of them. Yeah. But it's true. You can't just say it and bluff. We've built a good business. And I was totally fine walking away both times, which is just negotiating 101, right? You have to know that you can walk away and you'll be totally fine and mean it. And it's led us to having great backers, great investors, and being able to do a lot of what we've done.
I'm Sammi Cohen, and this is Social Currency, a podcast that unpacks the stories that are shaping business, culture, and the intersection of the two. What's the secret behind today's fastest growing newsletters, and how can creators build smarter, not harder? My guest today, Tyler Denk, is here to answer exactly that. Tyler was one of the first hires at Morning Brew, and he's now CEO of Beehiiv, the platform that's powering some of your favorite newsletters and fueling a new wave of digital media empires. Tyler's story starts in a place that many of us can relate to: broke, ambitious, and trying to build something out of nothing. In this conversation, he shares how he went from launching side hustles with no money to building the infrastructure behind Morning Brew's explosive growth before taking everything he learned to create Beehiiv. We talk about the hard truths of being a founder, why Tyler thinks that being single is a startup superpower, and how he's positioning Beehiiv to dominate in a creator economy flooded with tools. Plus, we dive into the role of AI and how it will or won't play in the future of content. This is Tyler Denk's Social Currency. Tyler Denk, welcome to Social Currency.
Thanks for having me.
So you've said that you had under $5 in your bank account when you were starting at Morning Brew. So at that time, with less than $5 in your bank account, what was your 5-year plan?
Definitely didn't have a 5-year plan at that point. I guess to give more context, like prior to having $5 in my bank account, I went to the University of Maryland. I started a company with a bunch of my friends there, and thinking that we were going to build this massively successful company. Like I never had a plan B, which I guess is also true today. But like his personality is very consistent all the way through. So in college, we were building this company. Everyone else in the engineering school had all of these different internships at different companies. And for me, I thought I was like above that. I was like, no, we're building this like massive company. And so I never made money in college. So I never had an internship, never had a job. Basically funded college through student loan. So graduated with $120,000 of student debt. And then after graduating, moved home with my parents and realized that that company that I thought was going to be $1 billion company was not $1 billion company. And it didn't really pay us anything up until that point. So that's where the screenshot comes from with I think it was 55 cents in my bank account, living in my parents' basement with $120,000 of student debt. And there was no 5-year plan at that point. But fortunately, I had supportive parents who like allowed me to live in the basement. I had an engineering degree from the University of Maryland, and I had an entrepreneurial spirit that I wanted to build something. So that remained strong, but I would have never guessed that I would go on to do what I've done since then.
And so what was the tie to Morning Brew? So you're in your basement. How do you go from basement to, job at Morning Brew?
Yeah. So one of the co-founders there is Austin Reef, and we actually grew up together in Baltimore. And so a few years previously, we were in Tel Aviv. We had I did have a unpaid internship for one summer in college before my startup. And we would always just talk about different business ideas. And at the time, he was telling me about this email newsletter idea, which I thought was so silly. And I was building this tech startup that I thought was so cool. So full circle moment, I ended up joining him eventually. But we were on the beaches of Tel Aviv hanging out. And we always had a very startup focused relationship and conversations. And when I was driving home from DC one day, I just called him to catch up. And he was so excited about the business. He just went full time at Morning Brew. And he had all these things that he wanted to build, but they didn't have an engineer to build them. And me being this scrappy, self-taught software developer, he was like, hey, would you want to build something for us on contract? And I was like, I have 55 cents in my bank account. He said $3,000. I said 100% I'm in. Totally lied my way through that. He was like, can you build this? And the answer was absolutely not, but I can figure it out. Told him absolutely yes. Got my first $3,000 building that for him. And then he was like, hey, we have so many other things that we need to build. You've already proven yourself that you can build something, even though you lied. You just want to keep building things for us. And that's kind of how the Morning Brew story started. It was just building stuff on contract from my parents' basement.
And so you were brought on to lead growth at Morning Brew. Did you have any idea in those early days of what Morning Brew would eventually turn into? Or was it really in the moment, just, okay, I got $3,000 for this initial gig and I'll see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't flying blind. The benefit of working with a startup, so it was the two co-founders, they had a writer, and then I was like this guy from Maryland working remote, just like building stuff on contract. But in a startup, you don't have like user permissions and like different roles and responsibilities. Everyone's kind of doing everything. So I had access to the inbox and all of the replies and the data and the metrics as I was building all of the different stuff for them, and saw that they had this like deep passion of followers and subscribers who would respond by the thousands every morning, being like, I can't start my day without Morning Brew. This is the greatest thing ever. I've shared to my parents, my kids, my best friends, like they all read Morning Brew. We talk about it every morning. So I kind of saw that fandom while I was like on contract. And that's like, I wasn't like flying blind, being like, I'll take any job that's willing to pay me. I knew the value of the skills that I had, but seeing kind of the fandom that they were building. And I'm a huge believer in Austin's been like a good friend. And then Alex is also incredibly smart. They had a really great nucleus of founders and talent, and like really just like caught lightning in a bottle with this movement of like newsletter first, millennial type content and news. And like I saw the potential of what they were doing pretty early on.
And so you pitch at one point this idea to the Morning Brew team about building this suite of newsletter growth tools within Morning Brew. And apparently that was shot down. So did that incident shake your confidence at all in this idea of what Beehiiv would eventually become?
Yeah, it's probably worth. So we just jumped 3.5 years. So I'll like fill everyone in. I joined Morning Brew kind of running like product engineering and growth. So self-taught developer. They didn't have a website, or they had like a very basic website. I built the website. I built a CMS, which is what the writers would use to actually create the newsletters on a day-to-day basis before they were just copy and pasting into like some static document. I built like a ad management platform. So Morning Brew makes money from advertisements. So brands come to them, they get their logo and like copy in the newsletter. And at one point we had 6 different newsletters, 3 different advertisers per newsletter. So there's like 30 different ad units per week. And it was all done in like spreadsheets. So we built our own ad management platform. So long story short, we kind of built this entire bespoke ecosystem unique to Morning Brew. The writers had their own tech that we built in-house. We had our own custom website. We had our own monetization and ad network type platform. And fast forward, Morning Brew grew extremely well. When I joined, we had about 100,000 subscribers. When we got acquired, we had about 3.5 million 3 years later. And so we were on this rocket ship of one like custom built tech that worked really well, amazing content. And I also ran growth for a large part of that. So I was spending $500,000 a month on paid acquisition, which I totally taught myself, had no idea what I was doing. Just like Austin's like spend money to help us grow faster. And I was like, sure, I'll figure that out. And fortunately did figure it out. So Morning Brew was this incredible experience of like white space and an ability to learn new things. They trusted me entirely. And it worked extremely well and we grew. And then towards the end, I was like, hey, we've built this amazing thing. And I'm like a tech software guy. And like tech is cool. It's cool building tech for the 15 people at the company, but it's a lot cooler to build for 15,000 or 15 million people. And I think every engineer kind of wants to build things that more people touch in the world. And so amazing journey building internal tech. I kind of pitched them. I was like, hey, we're getting tons of email replies from people who want to use like the referral program that we built, or that are really impressed with like our the data we collect, our templates, like how everything looks, how everything works. I think this is a business in itself that other publishers or hobbyists or journalists would enjoy using the tech that we have built, because we already have the case study. Morning Brew went from 100K to 3.5 million, and you can have that exact same tech that used at Morning Brew for yourself. So the pitch was right there. What I didn't know was like they were already having talks about getting acquired with a bunch of different companies. And here I am, like this like 26-year-old self-taught developer being like, hey, I know this business is great. And I didn't know that they were in talks getting acquired. But I think we should pivot our entire business to be this tech business. So like, I don't fault them for being like, hey, I don't think that's like the right thing to do. And I had no way of knowing that they were going through these acquisition talks. So I didn't take it personally that it's a bad idea. I always had a ton of conviction that there was real value there. Otherwise, I don't think Morning Brew would have been what Morning Brew is. And
I read that you actually left Morning Brew a short period of time before the acquisition happened. Had you known that the acquisition was in the works, would you have stayed?
No. And so that was like totally coincidental and actually I think worked out in my favor. So I don't know how well people and every acquisition is very different, right? But typically when a company gets acquired, there's like some rollover responsibility of the new company who acquired you doesn't want to like pay you out and then everyone leaves. So they have a lot of incentives where if you hit different revenue milestones or people stay for key people stay for 1, 2, 3 years, you get paid out more. So they kind of give you like the golden handcuffs to stay in the new company. So the company who just spent, $100 million, whatever it is, to buy the company doesn't have everyone leave and it kind of go to shit. So had I had stayed, I'm assuming I would have had to stay at Business Insider for another 2 to 3 years to kind of earn out like the equity and everything. And again, like I wasn't involved in those conversations. So it's all hypothetical of like what my responsibility would have been. But I obviously left because I did my 3.5 years there. I'm like forever like thankful. It was an amazing experience, but I kind of hit like the end of my journey there. And I think if I was told that, hey, we just got acquired, but for me to like really earn out like the equity and money that I deserved, I'd have to stay another 2 to 3 years. It would have been a pretty depressing 2 to 3 years for me, I think. So I'm happy it worked out the way that it did.
And I'm curious to hear about a core memory that you have from your time at Morning Brew that really shaped your experience or perhaps thought process on building out Beehiiv.
We would set the newsletter every night. So the newsletter goes out like, I think 6 a.m. Eastern time every morning. We typically set it at night between 8 or 9 o'clock. But we were in New York. We're like networking. We go to events. Like every now clients like take us out. We'd happy hour. So like we would be invited to go to see like the Rangers game, or we'd go to like a happy hour that turned into like a late night at a club. But like that newsletter still had to get set. And we were like a small, scrappy team. And it's not like we've like delegated. It's like the most important thing you can do is make sure it goes out perfectly the next morning. So we'd always have our backpacks on us. And like we'd literally be at like a club in Lower East Side at like 3 a.m. And I'd pull out my laptop and we'd like run through tests as we're like drunk, making sure everything looks good and like set the newsletter. And it's like that level of like, it just has to get done. And there's no one else to do it. And like, we're the ones in charge here. I think we have a photo album somewhere of like the most ridiculous places that we were like setting the newsletter, from like the nicest like Michelin star restaurants to like clubs to like the Rangers game. Literally like snuck our laptop in so we could set that during like a hockey game. But there's something about like that fun startup grind, which is so anti like corporate or like what you would expect at like a big media company. Like they would never allow that, or like nor would anyone give a shit enough to like go through like the embarrassment to even do that stuff. So that's like, I don't know, pretty core memory for me.
That's a good one. So we mentioned you eventually leaving Morning Brew. And when you left Morning Brew, you went to YouTube. And at that time, you were moonlighting. You were working on Beehiiv early stages after work on the weekends. So tell me more about the very early stages of building Beehiiv.
Yeah, YouTube's like a black hole for me. It was such a weird time. So I left Morning Brew in the fall of 2020. So like we had already kind of gone remote because of COVID. And so I was like living in Williamsburg, working on Morning Brew, kind of like on my way out of Morning Brew. My roommate worked at Google and I love music. I have like my Big Desk Energy playlist. Like I'm like a huge music person. He found this role for YouTube Music. And I was like already kind of like on the way out with Morning Brew and applied and got the job. And it also was like which I knew going into it was a totally different pace. It was me setting the newsletter at 2 a.m. because someone had to do it in like a Lower East Side bar, to having so many layers of management above me that nothing ever really got done. And like the work that I was actually assigned, I finished at 10, 11 a.m. every morning. And it was just like a totally different pace, which I'm not naive. And I kind of expected that, but I kind of wanted to see what big tech was about and see if there's anything that I could extract. I never had like a real job with like real instruction and best practices. And Google's like kind of like the best of like product management. And so I felt that I could learn something from going through that experience. And I did. I actually learned a lot of like what a PRD is, how to scope things with engineers, how to like do this like full product cycle. Like that, we were flying totally blind at Morning Brew and it worked out. But everything that I learned at Google, I have applied at Beehiiv. It was 10 months. That is kind of a black hole in my memory, but a good 10 months. But that kind of like sets the stage of, I was in this Williamsburg apartment working at this company that I was kind of done with work at like 11 o'clock noon every day. And before even joining, I had a week in between jobs that I actually got COVID. So I was like stranded in my apartment, couldn't travel, couldn't do anything. And I called up my now co-founder, but co-worker, the first person I ever hired at Morning Brew, Ben, who's like a software engineer. And like, again, we're like in the trenches at Morning Brew, always talking about how cool would it be if we could build this for so many more than like the 30 employees at this company. And I told him, I was like, hey, I have COVID. I'm so bored. I have like nothing to do. But I actually think that idea we had about like kind of productizing Morning Brew has like a ton of legs. And, you know, we've just spent 3.5 years building it. He's like, dude, it's a lot of work. And like just doing that again, but better, but for everyone, like huge uphill battle. And he's like, if we're going to do it, we have to bring my good friend, Jake, who's like our third co-founder. And I was like, sure, let's do it. And so from that point on, so literally from before I started day one of YouTube, we had already kind of planted the seeds of like, let's meet every week and start writing out the roadmap and figuring out how we're going to build this thing. Meanwhile, they were both at Morning Brew. I was at Google, and we just worked nights and weekends kind of building this thing. And that was like probably the most stressful 10 months because you're building this thing that is no guarantee of success, right? Like it's a very competitive industry. And we had like a very slim wedge of what we think we could do well. And at any moment, I thought I could wake up and any of the competitors could have launched something that made our wedge like totally useless, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's that anxiety of like, are we spending all of our time in like waking hours on something that could be like totally useless if one company launches one feature? So that was scary. And then it's like, it's all self-imposed deadlines. And like both of them are married, but one like just recently got married. They have a full-time, more demanding job at Morning Brew than me at Google. I'm like, hey, we have to launch this. Hey, we have to do this. And they're like, hey, we're on vacation in Costa Rica right now. I'm like, I know, but like I see this opportunity and I don't want to waste this. It's like very stressful and strainful in the relationship to push people so hard when we're not getting paid for it. There's no guarantee of anything. There's no guarantee we even get this off the ground and do anything with it. Because like I feel like everyone can relate to having this like one idea where like, oh shit, we have to do that. Mm-hmm. And like it comes and goes and it fades and like most ideas do. And this was just one that I didn't want to let go. But very stressful 10 months, I'd say.
And you mentioned that none of you were paying yourselves because you hadn't raised capital, but you did raise a seed round of funding before you went all in. So who were your initial investors?
Yeah, so everyone always thinks that founders and entrepreneurs are so risk tolerant. I think, we are, but we de-risk this as much as we possibly could. Like again, we're both married. I made a little bit of money from the Morning Brew acquisition, but like by no means like super comfortable. I could fund a full business by myself. And so we never wanted to be in a position where we would start the company and just work for free. It's like the whole like ramen diet that I think is like a terrible idea for founders. I was like, we don't have to pay ourselves a lot, but we should be able to like go to the grocery store and pay rent and like be able to focus on the business, not have to focus on where's money coming from to like worry about personal finances. And so in July, I came to LA with a bunch of friends. And like my goal for July, this is 10 months after starting building, is let's try to raise a seed round. We had like a kind of working prototype. We had the backstory of 3 co-founders who are all Morning Brew engineers. We had the success of the Morning Brew acquisition. So like that is the case study. And then we had a wait list. I like tweeted and like, hey, I'm like building this thing. That's the first time I announced it. I was like, we're building this thing. It's kind of, Substack had just started to take off and get very popular at the time. Twitter acquired Review. Facebook launched Bulletin, which was like their newsletter initiative. So newsletters were like very hot all of a sudden. And I was like, hey, it's the Morning Brew team. We just built this. Let me know if you're interested. And we got like 400 people to put their email and information in this wait list. So I spent all July in LA just trying to network and raise a seed round. And so we got connected with Howard Lindzon of Social Leverage, was like the first check-in, essentially. It was a $2.5 million seed round. I think they put in like 1.5 of that. They're based in San Diego. And so I was like mission successful. I came to LA in July, met them in San Diego. We like did the deal at the end of July, early September. And as soon as the money hit the bank, we all quit our jobs and did that. So it was like a full de-risking with like no interruption from like having some sort of income, which was like really nice.
I think you bring up a good point around this push and pull of risk aversion as a founder versus the trope of the founder who just leaves his job and jumps all in and worries about funding later. But I think most of the time when you hear someone who is launching a company, what you don't see behind the scenes is that there is more financial backing or protection than the headline suggests. Either they have supportive parents and they're able to hang out at their parents' house while they build, or they're able to, have a full-time job and build it on the side. So I think when people hear your story, I like the fact that you're calling out that you actually did try and hedge a bit.
Well, I think being a founder is so much harder than I would have ever expected. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, and it's not even close. And I think when you realize that you have to put all of your time, effort, and focus into like building the company, figuring out like, oh, am I budgeting okay so I can like get this like nicer apartment so I can have a little bit of space because we're all remote. Like you kind of don't want to be focusing on personal finances. And we never paid ourselves amazing, but we paid ourselves enough where like personal finances were fine, right? And like I think that's actually, it goes counter to like the whole ramen diet. Like we're hustling, like we're not paying ourselves. Cause like a lot of founders try to prove themselves. Like I'm so committed to this. And I can tell investors I'm not even paying myself. Like that's how committed I am. And I feel like that is just a fallacy of you're just setting yourself up to like burn out, or you're like incredibly fortunate to either have a lot of capital or like come from a wealthy family. And there's somewhere in between on that spectrum. But I just think you're creating disadvantages that don't need to exist when your time and effort should be focused on just building the company.
Yeah. I want to transition a bit to a little bit further on down the stage of building Beehiiv, but I first want to ask you about the name Beehiiv. Is there an origin story? And also the spelling. How did you land on the spelling?
Yeah. I think it'll say a lot about my personality because there's not much of an origin story. When we had this like desire of here's the vision, I want to build this. I'm very OCD where like you need some foundation to build on. Like you need a name, you need a color, you need something. And I was like, let's just get a name out there. And I spent maybe an hour thinking of like different names. The name of like having a hive of followers, Beehiiv, like came up. Of course, Beehiiv spelled correctly was like not available for a domain. So like as any other startup founder does, you just test like 20 different variations of it. We found one with totally incorrect spelling, but close enough where we can figure out what it is. It was available for $10. We bought it and we started building. And it's one of those things that I have a few like strong takes on building a company. I think if you have an amazing product, like you can overlook, like you don't have to have like the perfect branding and name. I think product speaks louder than that. I think if I would have had a month to do nothing but think of like the perfect name and branding and everything, I don't think Beehiiv is where I would have landed. But it's also, I think, speaks to like what I value or what I think is most important, which is like that was an hour exercise. And then we just went heads down and started building, and we haven't stopped building from that moment. And like I think that's totally fine. And it's like responsible for like a lot of the reason that we are where we are today.
And to confirm, no connection to Beyonce.
No, I did go to her concert a few months ago in LA and it was fantastic, but like no relation yet.
You just held up the Beehiiv sign with your spelling and
exactly.
She thought it was for her.
I thought the concert was for me.
So how did you get your first 100 users? You already said that you had a wait list of 400 people. Now, when you were converting those people from the wait list to actual users, was there a strategy or a growth hack that worked really well for you early on?
Funny enough, you bring that up. I haven't thought about the wait list in such a long time. And someone who I reached out to on that wait list emailed me back 4 years later, like literally a month ago. And
wow.
Like the timestamp from 2021 to like last week was crazy.
What did they say?
They're like, hey, I know it's been a while, but I think I'm ready around. I'm like, I'm ready to come around and join the platform. I was like, bro, we needed you 3 years ago. But yeah, we had that list of like 400 people. I know it's like free to put in your name and information. We collect a little bit of information, like what platform are you using now? How big is your list? Like, what's your biggest pain point? It's kind of like information gathering. It's almost like a business school, just like what are the pain points? Like who can we serve? Once we launched, we reached out to all of them, just like nothing fancy. No, I mean, now we have like AI automations and everything. Back then I was in Gmail, BCCing and like emailing one by one, all 400 people with like a little talk track. Like, hey, we just launched this, giving it away for free. Or like, I don't know, it's like we were so underpriced for like the longest time and still are very, very competitively priced. So if they are using like MailChimp, it'd be like, hey, it would save you 60% of your monthly costs. It's a new unproven product, but like I'll hold your hand every step of the way through. And so we got, I think it was maybe like a 25% conversion. So that actually like about 100 people moved in. That was just like every week. It was who else can we reach out to on that list to move them over? The other thing that we did for our first 100 users is when we raised that seed round, so Howard Lindsay and Social Leverage put in like their million, whatever. We had about 500K reserved for like angel investors, and the angel investors were all very strategic, as in they already had an email list or were in media or like kind of were our ideal users. So like the easiest way to get users are like they invested in the company and they have this shared success or like shared incentive to want us to succeed. So we have about 30 to 35 strategic angel investors. I think about 10 to 15 of them moved over as well. And they all had more reputation and like a larger list that helped in the early days as well.
And so obviously these were strategics. Was there a specific creator or publication that maybe wasn't part of that initial angel group that signed on perhaps in the earlier days of Beehiiv that gave you this feeling that Beehiiv was really going to turn into something?
Sure, there was. The one that comes to mind actually was an investor. So Liquidity, the meme account.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He wrote a check into the company. And the reason why he stands out is like he actually had like 100,000 person list. And like we've been hacking together this like tiny like side project. Like it is not meant for the big leagues. I'm still embarrassed by the product because I'm such a perfectionist. Like I feel like there's so much more that we can do to improve what we have today. So 3.5 years ago, this thing is like embarrassing. And I always respect him a ton because no hesitation, like he has like a full business built on his email list. Like he's driving like north of $1 million of revenue from his 100,000 person email list. And no hesitation, he goes, yeah, I'll move over to help you guys. And like moved 100,000 emails over. At the time where we were prior to that, we were probably sending 10,000 emails a day total between all of our users. And he like 10x that just himself. And it didn't break. So that was like the first time I was like, oh, we can actually handle that. And like and he's never complained once. And like now the product's great. But yeah, I think him buying in and believing in us and like it not breaking the entire platform was like a huge sense of relief. Yeah.
And when Beehiiv launched, and this is very much still the case today, but it was back then as well, there were several incumbents and successful incumbents in the market. So what gave you the conviction that there was still white space there?
Yeah, a few different things. I'd say what I classify as like email 1.0, which is like Constant Contact, MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, like pure email platforms that have been around for 15, 20 years. They just send email. Like their product is like, hey, you go to us and you send, and it's typically like marketing email as well, but they send email. There's a whole nother component, which Beehiiv does and Morning Brew did as well. Like we have like the whole website and blogs. Like at Morning Brew, the problem we were solving was we had this custom WordPress website and we would copy and paste the content that we post on the WordPress website into MailChimp. So it's two different systems. And then if you want like a referral program, it's a whole nother system. And then if you want audience development and engagement, like that's another like dashboard that you need to build. And then if you want to monetize and you don't have your own ad sales team, you use like Live Intent or like these different banner ads. And so that was like the old paradigm of how media companies kind of like handled email newsletters. There's like 5 or 6 different components. And a lot of media companies and journalists don't have a ton of like engineering and tech talent. So piecing them together is like a total pain in the ass. And so what we did at Morning Brew was like we built our own solution that had all of that in like one like tightly integrated system, and it worked really well. And when you look at the market, with the exception of Substack, who did something similar, Substack bundled email, website, and paid subscriptions under one. And there's a reason why I think us and Substack are kind of jumping out and like having the success that we're having. But that bundling of platforms like didn't really exist. And so there's all of email 1.0, which like slow, hasn't been updated in forever, just sends email. There's like website builders that don't really do email, right? So it's like 2 different systems again. And then there was the vision that we had for Beehiiv, which is what if we bundled email, website, growth tools, and monetization? So again, the Morning Brew package that we know works because it has worked for us, and build into a platform that anyone could use. I just thought that value prop was strong enough that we would be able to win people over. And the results are kind of like they prove themselves, right? When you move over and you grow faster on our platform, when you had some like janky process copy and pasting between your old website and like your email, and now it's like your editor can do everything in one platform, and you're making money from our ad network, like the results kind of speak for themselves. And that was kind of like the vision that we've always had from the beginning.
So for someone who wants to start a newsletter and they're starting from 0 followers and they're trying to figure out how they should grow this thing and build their community, what would your advice for them be?
Yeah, I think being open to experimentation, because it is such a low cost commitment. You don't have to quit your day job and go all in on this newsletter business. You can do something that you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about sports, if you're passionate about the WNBA, start writing about the WNBA and send it to people who are also interested in that. And I think like not trying to over index on paid acquisition and just focusing on like do people enjoy this and would they share it for free is a great sign that you have something that other people are interested in. And I think the willingness to experiment, to try different formats, to try different acquisition strategies, like fortunately platforms like Beehiiv and others make it so easy and like free to get started. I just think it's like a great opportunity to be able to like test and experiment and not tie yourself down to like one specific product or approach or business model.
And you had mentioned your newsletter, Big Desk Energy, fantastic name.
Yep, thank you.
What were some initial growth tactics that you used in order to scale your newsletter?
Yeah, so Big Desk Energy started as a Spotify playlist, actually way back in the Morning Brew days. So I listen to music all day when I work, found an amazing song, created a playlist around it, and then Morning Brew put in the newsletter and it got 5,000 followers on Spotify. Now we're up to 20,000. So it's a little side project of mine, built a website, eventually launched the newsletter. I always obviously building Beehiiv. That was actually going to be the name of the newsletter, is building Beehiiv. I always kind of wanted to document the story and the narrative of like what we're actually doing behind the scenes, because it's the type of content that I'm interested in, is like startup stories and founder journeys and like everything of the sort. And there's not a ton of content. There's a lot of startup content, but it either comes from a place of I already sold my business. This is what I did 5 years ago, which is like less applicable. And you kind of already know how the story plays out. It's almost like a drama. Like when I share what we're building in real time, it's like you have no idea how this is going to turn out. Like I think this is a good idea, could be a terrible idea. And like we'll find out in like a few months to come, right? And so it's like interesting documenting the journey, almost like a journal as I'm doing it. And I've always wanted to do that from like literally day one of building the company. Turns out when you start the company, it's like very stressful. And like there's not enough time to like carve out 3 hours to write this newsletter every week. You're putting out fires, and like every newsletter would scare investors away knowing how many fires that are going on. So never launched it up until last November. I think the holidays tricked me. Like the time slowed down a little bit. It was like less hectic. And I was like, oh, I think I have time to do this now. So I launched Big Desk Energy. And the way that I initially started it was, fortunately, I don't know, like 15,000 followers on Twitter, nothing gigantic. But I was like, hey, I'm going to launch a newsletter. I'm not launching it till I have 1,000 subscribers. So I kind of like put it on people to subscribe. I was like, hey, please like share this. Like I'm not sending anything till we have 1,000. Also just like a time and effort thing. Like I didn't want to write a whole like I'm a very slow writer. I didn't want to write for 5 hours to have like four people read this thing. So that was like the first thing I did. But then there's like a lot of strategies that like anyone could take advantage of. So I post on social the night before. So I publish the newsletter every Tuesday, and every Monday on Instagram, on X, and on LinkedIn, I say, here's what I'm writing about. Sign up here. It'll be in your inbox tomorrow. Free acquisition. I get like, I don't know, nothing major, 15 to 20 subscribers just by like kind of previewing what I'm going to write about. Then on Tuesday, I publish it. Same thing, but it's like a different angle, and it's kind of like a lead magnet. So it's like, today I shared how we hit 20 million ARR. Read about it here. And you click through, and Beehiiv has a feature where you can put like an email gate up. So like no one can read unless they put in their email. So you have like, it's almost like clickbait, right? You get people drawn in from like this headline. They click, they want to read it. They have to put in their email. It's like another 20, 30 subscribers. And then there's like a bunch of other things. So the thing that people always want with newsletters is like, they want like that silver bullet of like, this is how I get to 1 million subscribers next month. The thing is like, I do 20 things that all add like 15 subscribers a day, but it compounds over time. And so like a referral program, I have like a merch shop that you can get like 30% off if you share the newsletter. I do lead magnets. So I'm very transparent about the journey. And so I've created like the Series Seed deck that we had where we raised the 2.5 million, super useful for other founders who are thinking about raising money. I'm like, hey, if you put in your email here, I'll email you the seed deck. And so I like run ads for that as well. It's like a bunch of different things, but I don't know, I've documented all of this. I'm like, we're very open about how growing, and like most of it is all through the Beehiiv platform anyway. The only like extra bit is like paid acquisition, which I think any newsletter who really tries to hit scale has to eventually put like some money behind it for Facebook or Instagram ads traditionally. But yeah, we're at 110,000 subscribers and it's good.
I'm personally subscribed to Big Desk Energy, and I love what you said around when you're building something live, right? Sometimes you'll just throw out these crazy ideas of like, hey, we're going to try doing this, or we're going to ship this product. And sometimes it doesn't work the way that you had envisioned, but that actually makes for better content, honestly. Because people, like, this is what I tell people all the time. people get tired of the success stories. The success stories are fun every once in a while, but what people actually want to see a lot of the time, especially from the founder angle of what it's like in the trenches and what's not working.
It's by far the newsletters that I get the most responses to are the ones where I'm the most vulnerable of like, I was so convinced that this was going to work and it totally didn't. And it fucked up everything for a while.
Yeah.
And people are like, that's like really refreshing to hear. Or like, I've done like some pretty personal, like there's like been very dark times throughout this journey. And like we're totally remote. So we have 100 employees located around the world. I think we have like 3 people in LA, all different parts of LA. People don't drive in LA, or too many people drive in LA. So no one drives in LA. So like I'm in my room 16 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, I'd say. And like, there are times when like the company is crushing and I feel like I'm on top of the world and like I just live off that energy. And there's times where you go through like 2 or 3 bad weeks, like a bad launch, big user churns, someone you thought you were going to hire ends up like pulling back on their offer. There's like problem after problem after problem. And you're just in your room by yourself, isolated for 16 hours. And like there's definitely been some like pretty dark and depressing days throughout the journey. And I'm like pretty open about it. And like I think there's times where my best newsletters I've ever written have been so raw and in the moment of like no filter. Like I feel like I want to express myself. I open up like an Apple notepad and I just like write, don't care about grammar or anything. And like those get the best feedback by far. And it's not forced. Like it's not performative and I'm not trying to like force any sort of like hardship or founder journey. And I think that's why people have resonated with the newsletter. It's just like real stories and it's usually good, but there's definitely been some bad times and I've shared them.
And I think that's actually a good takeaway for anyone who's listening, who's either writing their own newsletter or thinking about it. And probably this applies to just content creation more generally, of just sharing the moments where things aren't going right, because that's generally what people respond the most to.
And I think especially when you're like a venture-backed startup, everyone wants to be performative because they're always looking for like that next round of funding. And I've always been like, I'm like the most anti-VC, but VC-backed founder because like I've taken venture money 3 times now. And every time I'm like, we don't need it anymore. But I think that mentality has actually helped us a lot. The fact that I'm like, I don't want to be dependent on venture money. I want to build a successful business that can stand alone by itself. And truly believing that that's possible is actually what brought a lot of the venture money in. Because because we're building like a strong foundational business. And the fact that I'm not like, how do we juice metrics and put on this like very performative facade that everything's perfect, hoping that we can get more investors in at a higher valuation. And like, I don't really play that game. And so the fact that I am very transparent, it is very different from other companies who I don't think would ever publish anything publicly that they messed up anything, because they want to seem like infallible and like that investors like would love to back them because they don't make any mistakes. I think people see right through that.
Totally. And it's so ironic that the companies or founders that need venture capital, or they say, okay, we really want to raise from VCs because we need that capital to scale. It's actually very telling, right? Because it's like, why do you need that money to scale? Why can't you organically create that revenue for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, we raised a $12.5 million Series A and a $33 million Series B. And both times at the negotiating table, I said, we don't need this. Like we can keep building and like, I'm totally fine. And that makes them want you a lot more. Yeah. And so that's why we've gotten great terms and great valuations on both of them.
Yeah.
But it's true. You can't just say it and bluff. Like we've built a good business and I was totally fine walking away both times, which is just like negotiating 101, right? You have to know that you can walk away and you'll be totally fine and mean it. And it's led us to having great backers, great investors, and being able to do a lot of what we've done.
So speaking of other companies that have also done very well in this space, I want to talk about the Substack of it all. So some of your competitors, Substack included, have leaned very heavily into social discovery or going after specific verticals. And for Substack, just one example of the verticals they go after, they really try and own the fashion writer, blogger piece. So how does Beehiiv think about prioritizing verticals, or do you?
We have verticals. We have a bunch of business newsletters. We have a lot of like independent journalists. We have a lot of athletes and wellness coaches, and we have these verticals and we publicize them on their page. I don't think we've done like an all-out like focus on like individual verticals. I think we're like pretty broad as a platform. I think we've built a platform that can do everything from my personal newsletter to Arnold Schwarzenegger to Time to independent journalists like Oliver Darcy. We kind of casted a very wide net, which is intentional. The platform should be very flexible, where whatever your passion or whatever your content category is, the tools that we've built should be able to support you. And then we've obviously carved out different verticals, like I've mentioned, because once you start to pick up like the network effects and momentum in these individual niches, then when all of the content creators in an individual space are using an individual or specific platform, it becomes a lot easier to talk about it. You're more top of mind, or easier to recommend each other and kind of help each other. So we've seen some success there, but I don't think it's been as intentional as like going after fashion bloggers per se.
Yeah. And on the Beehiiv site, you actually have a page that directly compares the features of Beehiiv versus Substack. So what would you say is Beehiiv's biggest differentiator?
Yeah, I think what I'm really interested in is building a platform that helps other people succeed. Like that's what motivates me and inspires me, is helping other people succeed. And I think that we've seen time and time again, the platforms that put themselves in between users and their audience typically doesn't work out super well for the users. And so when Facebook changed their newsfeed in 2018, when Twitter started deprioritizing links to publishers, I think recently this past week, there was like an article that came out that Google traffic is cut like 50% to a lot of publishers, right? And so when these platforms become intermediaries between users and audiences, it's usually the users who don't benefit at the end. And so what makes me super passionate about Beehiiv and what we're building is email is like the ultimate own your audience, own your distribution. You can use Gmail, Apple Mail, Superhuman, like it doesn't matter. Like you kind of own that direct relationship with your audience. Substack is building a social platform. And so they're trying to more go after Twitter, X, Blue Sky, Threads, and kind of, they have video features, they have audio features, they have community and chat. And so they're really just building a social network. And so an analogy that we use pretty commonly is kind of like the Amazon versus Shopify, where Amazon has hundreds of thousands of third-party sellers, but you don't know that. You just go to Amazon because you go to Amazon.com, and Amazon sends you it in their boxes. You use their app, you use their tracking and distribution. Like it's everything through Amazon. And the third-party sellers are kind of like behind the scenes, like they're like supplying the goods. Shopify empowers these brands to build their own storefronts, and they're like the tools and infrastructure to make digital commerce possible. And so that's kind of how I view the two of us. Substack is very much like an Amazon. You go to the Substack app to find all of the content, but it's the Substack app. It's not their app. Whereas we have content creators who have built their own personal brand, their own unique and distinct style on ours. We actually have a feature where you can actually launch your own app through our system. So you can have like the Arnold Schwarzenegger app rather than going through the Beehiiv app. And so I think empowering brands and creators to be first, and then also having them own their audience and distribution via email, is something that is very powerful. And I think they're just two totally different philosophies of how we're building the business. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of like the main differentiator.
That's a really interesting analogy. And I think that for me, that makes it a lot stronger of a differentiator than I've personally ever heard before. So, I mean, you said you use it a lot. I see why.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you can go deeper into like the feature differences, right? So like they are very much built for like a hobbyist with like very basic analytics, very basic editing, very basic features. But like they don't have email automations. They don't have A/B testing. They don't have lead magnets. Like these are things that like publishers like Time or like legitimate publishers and creators who want to own their business end to end kind of need this functionality, which is the norm for every other email platform. But they're kind of going for like the social platform hobbyist long tail, which is great. And like they've had success there. They're doing well. They're 4 years older than us and have a little bit more revenue than us. And like, that's totally fine. But I'm really, really bullish about what we're building. And I think what we're building has much more staying power than another social network.
I want to switch to something that's super interesting that you've talked about. And it's that you've trained an AI clone on your writing called Denk. And your readers of your newsletter can have a full conversation with Denk, ask it questions, and it's trained on your writing. And when I was reading this, what I was thinking about is newsletters to me are such a personal medium, or at least that's how I kind of would like them to feel. Do you think that AI avatars make newsletter writing more or less personal, and why?
It's a great question. I think it allows readers to go like one layer deeper. And so Denkbot is built on shout out DeFi. One of my friends started this company, or Delphi. I blew the name. Delphi. So they allow you to kind of build like this AI clone based on all of the content that you've created. So whether it's blogs, newsletters, social posts, YouTube videos, like it ingests all of the content. So it knows how you speak, what the information, your thoughts, your opinions, whatever. And I thought it was a really interesting angle because the pitch for Delphi and why I think it's interesting for creators is like the limiting factor is typically time. And like I can only respond to so many people and I can only call and text so many people at once. And it obviously doesn't replace me. But for the long tail of readers, like I have 110,000 readers, like for me to be able to have a conversation and actually build a relationship with all of them is unrealistic. But to say like, if you like my thoughts, my philosophies, my writing, you can just have my entire archive of everything I've ever written and access that via this like AI bot. I think it's interesting. It's like very experimental for me, I'd say. And then there's also something around beyond just like this meta of like speaking to an AI bot and replacing people. I think there's like a utilitarian argument to it of search is like pretty outdated. And you're kind of seeing that with like Google and ChatGPT. Like the old way of like finding content is like, let me go to this website, find the search box, type in what I'm looking for, 15 articles pop up, and then you have to click into each of those 15 articles. Whereas like ChatGPT like showed people like just talk to it and just ask what you want and it'll pull in the right information to get you. So it's kind of the same thing. Instead of searching through my archive of content or finding like the podcast interviews or like the newsletters that I've written, can you just talk to Denkbot and ask like, hey, what's your thought on like having a co-founder that has like a lot of equity? Like, should we do 50-50 or something else? And like I've written about that somewhere or talked about it and it'll just pull it in and reference it. I think it's like a lot easier of like a medium of communication. So that's why I'm pretty bullish on it.
I feel like we're going to see much more of this in the future.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing super well. I mean, there's a few other companies that are doing something similar. I'm closest with them. I've been following their success, and they're definitely finding a good niche in like coaches. So whether it's like dating coaches, I think there's this dating coach. I have no idea who it is, but he like went mega viral in launching this because like he basically sold for like $1,000 an hour. You can do a call with him, but instead of doing a call with him for $500 or for $50 a month, can you just talk to his AI chatbot that is trained on all of the type of advice that he gives anyway? So instead of just being limited to his like 10 hours a day that he's willing to do calls, he can have 10,000 people paying $50 a month for this like AI dating coach, right? And same with like public speakers and everything else. So it's a very quickly developing space, but you're starting to see a lot of interesting use cases.
And more generally, talking about AI, it's changing everything that we're doing, from reading to writing to monetization of different types of businesses. So how do you see it specifically impacting newsletter creators and full platforms like Beehiiv?
Yeah, for us, the way that we view it is a tool to help you get to your final state quicker. And so, or like being able to abstract a lot of the things that you don't want to do, which is like very manual work. So it could be anything from like writing is the easy one, right? Can you help edit content, make sure there's no spelling mistakes? Another interesting one is like translating. So maybe you have an audience in a different country that speaks a different language, or like you can basically duplicate your publication for a different region and a different language. That like makes it more possible with AI. But a lot of like mundane tasks, like for like the nerdy stuff in email of like churning unengaged subscribers and like flagging accounts that are like less engaged with your content. Like it's a lot of like manual work. Can AI just like do that proactively for you and tell you what they're doing? There's a lot of interesting ways to use AI. There's a lot of like for us, like building the company, a lot of ways that we're leveraging AI, from like security to spam to just how we run the business and how we build and ship features. I think that's really interesting. But it's a very delicate balance because content creators are content creators for a reason. And taking that away from them in favor of AI, and like you're already seeing this proliferation of so much like shitty AI content out there, like, which is actually gives me reason to be more bullish on authentic, genuine content that comes from someone that you look up to that's like an expert in their space or does something that you value, and it actually does come from them. It's like I actually don't use AI to write my newsletter. Like it's just like every now and then I'll get caught up on a sentence and I'll have it like spit out a few different ones, but outside of that, it's 100% just me.
Okay. So you have the AI clone, but you are not using AI for your newsletter. No. Okay. Got it. Do you think that the next big creator platform will be horizontal, so serving different types of content, or will it be vertical like what Beehiiv is building?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The thesis I have in the space that we're operating in is we're going to see a ton of consolidation. So the example of that is we started as just newsletter, and then a year ago we acquired this website builder. So now we offer like this beautiful website builder in addition to newsletter. And I think it's like a very powerful combination to have both of them together. And you can see how that keeps going down. Like you're seeing platforms that started as a link in bio tool also launch a website builder. And now they're like, oh, now that we're getting all this traffic, our users want email. So we're going to launch like an email tool. So like broadening the creator space, I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation where link in bio tools now have a website builder, are going to get into email, are going to try community. We've already seen a lot of the big community platforms pivot into like launching an email platform, trying to do something with link in bio. They're all kind of doing other things. So like if you look at like the 6 or 8 different like verticals of like the creator space, ignoring content like video, audio, text, they're all kind of like converging in some capacity. So I think we're going to see the proliferation of that as well.
Okay, interesting. And you've spent the last few winters in Colombia, and the other part of the year you're based in LA, where we are now. And in one of your newsletters, you wrote about something that I thought was really interesting. You called it contrast therapy, where you said that you find comfort in the discomfort of dropping yourself into a new routine, and it energizes you and it really forces you to think with a new perspective. So tell me more about this.
Yeah, that newsletter also got a lot of great feedback because I think it's so out there, I guess, like different than what most people do. Because I'll take a step back. We've been entirely remote since starting the company in COVID, right? So we launched the company in 2021. We now have 100 people around the world, and we're 100% remote. We get together once a year. We were in Montreal last year. We went to Mexico this year. But I work by myself 16 hours a day in my room. And a few years ago, I went to Mexico City for a month, and I was like, let's see if I can just work remote in a different country. And I love like the culture, the food. Like I've been learning Spanish at the time, and like fell in love with like, oh, this is awesome because like I'm now going to like a different gym, interacting with different people, learning a different language, and it's like got me out of my routine a bit. And I was like just as productive, more or less. Call it like a 5% drop off. And so then I was like, oh, where else can I go in Latin America where it's also like cheaper too? And so like there's always like the dollar arbitrage, which like a lot of like these remote workers always look for. Like they go to Bali, they go to Indonesia, they go to like Mexico City, they go to Medellin. And it's like just a lower cost of living. So like while I'm in like building mode, when I live in Colombia, I have a chef. It's like $1,000 a month, but he does lunch and dinner. And so when you like add it up, it's 10 extra hours I get back for my day to like work on work. And I'm eating healthier, better food. And it's like affordable. I can never get a chef in LA right now. So then I went to Medellin and like fell in love with it. So I spent 2 months there, then 4 months there, and then 4 months again this past winter. And I have like this whole like startup entrepreneur community there, friends with like a lot of locals as well. And it's just like a totally different lifestyle, and everything is just so much cheaper than obviously like LA or New York. And it allows me again to like remove myself from like personal finances and worries and actually like up level the quality of my life, from having like a maid to a chef to like a nice apartment with like a ton of space. And I also just like love the culture and the language. And I've like this beyond just everything that's great about Colombia and like Mexico City, I've realized that I'm so routine oriented, like more like so OCD, like so habitual of like how I start my mornings, how I wind down, the activities I do, that it's really great for focus. And it's really great for this like building stage. Like every Saturday morning, I'm going to do hot yoga. Then Sunday morning, I'm going to do surf. And then something like I have my routines, and it's great and super productive, but it's kind of the same thing every week. And so when I pick myself up after like 8 months of doing the same kind of stuff in LA and just move to an entire different continent, like almost like rewires your brain. You're like, oh, I have to like speak a different language and do different things. And it's kind of like the anti-complacency almost, which is like another like broad theme I think I've seen in my life of, I had all my friends in New York City. I had a great job, was working at Google, and I broke up with my girlfriend, moved across the country, quit Google, and like started totally fresh in LA. And it was like I didn't want to get into this like same habit and routine, and something about, and maybe it eventually like backfires, but like I think you need to like eventually get complacent with like life at some point, and that's like more of like a meta thought. But I think the thought of complacency scares me, and I think the ability to pick yourself up and throw yourself in the deep end with like a new business or a new country or a new language is really great for like, I don't know, rewiring and like adding a lot of excitement to your life. And so whenever I spend my 4 to 5 months in Colombia, towards the end, I'm like so excited to get back to LA. And towards my 8 months in LA, I'm so excited to get back to Colombia. And it's just like this thing to look forward to. And I don't know, it's been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, that newsletter was probably one of my favorites from you. I think it challenges people to think about, okay, let's say I live in LA. There's no way I can move to Medellin or wherever for 4 months out of the year, but can I do something different in my life? Whether that's some kind of new hobby, activity, routine, workout, whatever, to just shake things up so you start to see things differently.
It's 100% that. It's like a rewiring, shaking things up and like getting out. It's like really just getting out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about a piece that Inc. did on you because it was a really fun read. And it talks about how you obviously build your company in public. And the part that really stuck out to me was the part that described what people see of you as a caricature and that you're putting on, quote, a heightened and brash persona online when you talk about Beehiiv. So can you share more about how you think about who you are online?
I don't think about it, which is why I am, I think, the way that I am. Like, it's not performative. And I think this is why I think people like working for me is like, there's no like, this is corporate. Like, you have to look this way. You have to dress this way. You have to act this way. I bring like the same way that I talk and act with my best friends on the weekend to meetings on Monday morning. And like, everyone's like very comfortable just being themselves, like, and can embrace that. I think that like, there's like so much bullshit in the world. And like my roommate at one point was like, you just like take meetings with like your bed in the back. I was like, I sleep just like everyone else. So like, it's totally normal to be working in my room. Right. And like, he just comes from like a corporate lifestyle. And I just think that's like a waste of effort and time to like put on these like fake, like ways of like, this is like the proper way to conduct business. And this is how you're supposed to speak online. And if you're a CEO, you actually can't have strong opinions and speak out about things, or you're not allowed to like talk down to this or whatever. So I don't know, I'm like just totally like how I am in this interview is the same way I'm with my friends, same way that I bring to work. And like being online, like I'm very passionate about what we're building. And so what may come off as brash is like, hey, we just hit 20 million ARR. Like, I think that's really exciting. I don't view it as like, look at me. It's like my building in public founder stories started when we were making no money. And I'd share the smallest of wins. And a lot of people have followed that journey from when we were making $100 a month to now making 20 million a year. And I think it's actually like should be inspiring is like why I mostly do it is I share the good, I share the bad, I share the milestones. And like without the milestones, you can't really grade yourself of like how you're doing. So it's, I think, more inspirational than brash, but I guess that's in the eyes of the beholder.
What's been the hardest part about being a CEO that no one warned you about?
I think the biggest thing is like the job changes a lot. And so when we started, it was me and my two co-founders, and we didn't care about titles, responsibilities. We were very passionate about what we wanted to build and see in the world. And we just went heads down and built like nonstop. And then as you grow, you bring in more people to the organization. And at like 10, 15 people, now you need to have certain meetings and stand-ups. And like now the job changes from, hey, I don't care if I don't talk to my co-founder for a week because I know we're both working on this extremely hard and we're on the same page, to now we're like doing coordinated recurring meetings. And then you grow to 30, 40 people. And now the job is there's people who view this as a stepping stone in their career, and they want career development. They want certain policies and processes and handoffs, and like everything has to be perfect. And it's like I actually just liked when we were just building because we were passionate about what we were building. And like I heard this quote of like, when you start, 100% of your time is focused on the customer. Like you don't do anything that isn't like customer centric. And as you grow the business, that percentage gets lower and lower, and more of your time is being spent on process things and people things and like company building things. And like the more time that me as a CEO is spending on building processes, doing recurring meetings, doing peer reviews and one-on-ones in career development, that's all time that actually our users don't really give a shit about because they're not benefiting from this. And like some indirect way, yes, if we keep our employees happy and they're motivated, they can contribute more to the company. But broadly speaking, and like simplifying it, it's time I'm not spending on like, how do we make the product 10% better today so our users can benefit? And like, that's kind of just like the reality of it. And I've done my best. And like the NVIDIA founder, like apparently has like 60 direct reports and 0 one-on-ones. And he just like runs the company. Like he trusts them. They do things, they bring things to him, but there's like no process and bureaucracy there in terms of like his one-on-ones. And like, that's like an evolution that I'm kind of going through right now is like, I hate one-on-ones. I hire people that are smart. I trust them. And if they don't hear from me, it's typically a good thing. It means things are good. And like, I trust that what they're doing is working, but not everyone is like kind of down with that. Right. And like, as you build the company, there's a difference between best practices of like how a company should be run at 100 people and like what actually gets me excited to wake up every morning and like build this thing, and trying to find the right balance of how do I build something that I'm excited about, but also take on the responsibility of like CEO is like the only CEO that says like, I hate managing people. It's not that I hate people. It's like, I actually just would rather spend my time building things. I can manage people all day long. And like, I think I'm great at it. It's not where I prefer to spend my time, but that's kind of the job of the CEO. So that's kind of like the internal battle that I'm kind of experiencing right now. And it's interesting.
Any hot takes on growing or scaling a company for any founders or aspiring founders?
Yeah. The hot take that comes to mind is the one that I got the most engagement out ever on Twitter, where I said being single is a competitive advantage. And you get most people, I think, read that like, you're probably right. But like, there's like an identity that tied to everyone that they don't want to admit that's right, or they can't see beyond what that actually means. Because most people say like, I have this like incredible like wife or husband, and like I could never build without their support system or my kids or whatever. I'm sure that's all true. But ultimately what I'm saying is time is the most valuable thing that you have. And the more time that you could spend putting into the business undistracted and being selfish in a good way. Like, I think when you want to, depending on the type of company you want to build, if you want to build this high growth startup in a very competitive industry, my time and effort and focus has to be on the business. And the time that I have to spend on picking up kids from soccer practice and like taking my girlfriend out to dinner or whatever else is great and like healthy. But like, I'm okay with not being healthy at this point, healthy to an extent. I'm making that sacrifice because I want to build like a truly generational type company. And I think that takes sacrifice. And so I've just met a bunch of founders along the journey who have asked me for help. I'm like, oh, sure, let's do a call on Friday. And you're like, oh, I can't. I'm like going out with the wife for dinner. I was like, well, you asked me for help. But like, you want to go next week? He's like, oh, I can't. I have like this other commitment. Like, the more commitments you have, like, it's great. And again, there's something for balance. And not everyone's trying to be like, hey, work 80 hours a week and build this massive company. Personally, that's the decision that I made and like I want to participate in at this point in my life. And so for me, that's just been, I don't know, a truism.
Do you see that shifting though at a certain point?
Sure. Like, I'd love to get married one day and have a family and kids. I'm sure I'll be on the other side. I'll be one of your listeners who is on the other side of that, being like, that used to be me in my 20s. And I'm so glad that I have like an incredible wife and kids and family. And like, I'm never going back to working 80-hour weeks. And I respect that. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. It's just different games at different levels and different commitments. And I think this could be a multi-billion-dollar company. And I don't think many people can say that. And like, it takes sacrifice. And one of them is being a psychopath and saying that like, I value working over everything else. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. Going to questions that I ask every guest. Can you share a system that you have in place that benefits your career or business?
Going from my last answer to this, your listeners are going to think I'm a total psychopath.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I kind of hinted that I'm very routine oriented. And so I'm like religious about my morning and night routine. So like productivity and health is huge. So as much as I say I go all in on working, like I'm a total nut when it comes to like working out, eating healthy, clean air, clean water, like right supplements. So every morning I like wake up at 5:30. I don't touch my phone for the first hour and I stretch. I like do like morning stuff, brush your teeth, whatever. I've started meditating about 20 minutes every morning. Then I'll like unblock work stuff because a lot of people are on the East Coast, go to the gym, non-negotiable every morning, take a bunch of supplements throughout the day. And then at night, like try to wind down, like stop working at 9:00, but have like a meditation at night, have different supplements help me like deeper sleep, try to be in bed by 9:30. So I'd say like health productivity stuff is like really important to me. I eat the same thing like every day, which my roommate.
What do you eat?
Like same breakfast, like eggs, like banana, like fruit. Lunch, same thing, broccoli and like turkey and like same chicken for dinner. And like, so my roommate looks at me like, dude, you're like a total psychopath. I'm like, it's kind of like the Mark Zuckerberg. Like I just wear a black t-shirt every day so I don't have to think about it. Like I've built my life around, again, being a total psychopath. Like I just want to build this company to be successful. And I don't want to go to Erewhon or Trader Joe's and like be like, what am I going to cook this week? And like, what ingredients do I need? It's like, here's the 10 things I buy every single week. I'm going to make that and I'm not going to think about it. Again, like I'll grow. The goal is not to be a psychopath forever. The goal is to like eventually find additional stability in my life and like maybe eat different things for lunch during the week. Like that's fine. Right now we're just building and focusing.
All right. So the next question comes from our social currency corner, where I get your take on a trend that's impacting business or culture. And for this one, I wanted to ask you more broadly about these monetization funds for creators. I know we've talked a lot about Substack. Substack launched something called the Creator Accelerator Fund, but not just Substack. You've seen this across pretty much every major or most major social platforms. So would Beehiiv ever launch something like this? Why or why not?
I don't know if I'd say never, but I think where a lot of these creator platforms, when you deal with creators in general, there's like the appeal of like, oh, they have an audience, they're attractive, they're cool. Like they have a lot of followers for a reason, right? They have a lot of followers because they speak to a specific audience who really values the type of content that they create. And that comes with like ego and brand. And a lot of companies in the creator space want the biggest name creators to come onto their platform because it legitimizes their platform, right? And so it's like a marketing expense. And I think you've seen a lot of these creator businesses create these funds as a marketing budget to bring in the big names to say, oh, this huge creator uses XYZ platform. And the thinking is, if I see that my favorite creator uses that platform, then when I launch something, I will also use that platform. From like a business standpoint, I think it's kind of a race to the bottom where everyone is just paying creators and creators become willing to go to whoever the highest bidder is, right? And so it's like a losing game for everyone in the ecosystem to outbid each other to pay for a user just to use their platform. Call me old fashioned, but I feel like most businesses are like the users pay the platform for providing the service, right? And so we have like a media collective initiative where we have like, and that's more of like an independent journalism thing where we cover like health insurance, legal, platform costs, and other things. We have a lot of great independent journalism. And I think that's amazing for just like democracy at large and like people being able to trust different news sources, especially as like mainstream media has like gone through different phases recently. But just broadly raising money to pay creators to use Beehiiv, I think is kind of like a losing strategy. And I think that most platforms who participate in it view it as like a short-term thing. And then they get caught in like, oh, we just have to keep doing that because the expectation is, why would they ever choose my platform? We have to pay for users. I don't know. It's like not something we're like prioritizing right now.
Okay, makes sense. So let's end with a listener question. What tools or functionality, and I'm sure you have a ton of these because you love shipping products. So which tools or functionality are you most excited about launching that Beehiiv has not launched yet?
It's a good one. I was just going to go all in about the website builder, but we technically have launched it. I'll start there though. So we acquired this website, a website builder company a year ago called TypeDream. And we spent the past year basically, how tech acquisitions work is like you don't just like pick up their code and put in yours. Like just like tech doesn't work like that. So it's like a lot of work to rebuild everything that they had built over 4 years and bring it into our platform. And the website space, you could argue, is like as much of a bloodbath as like any industry. There's like Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, Webflow, but then there's also like all of these AI website builders as well. That being said, there's a huge competitive advantage to having your website directly connected to your newsletter. So it's all one coherent database. It's one coherent platform. You don't need to manage multiple logins. There's consistent design and brand. And I actually think that we've carved out like a really interesting spot in the market where we have users and creators who have this beautiful website. And with the new website builder, you can build like anything. It's like an actual like website builder. It's great. The newsletter, I think we already have like the best newsletter suite of tools in the market. And then when you factor things like the ad network, where we have brands like Netflix and Nike and HubSpot monetizing like AG1, basically paying our users to run ads in their newsletters, that combination of email, website, and monetization is like a true one of one that I don't think any other player in the space is doing. And we have such a leg up there. So that's like what I view as like this multi-billion-dollar opportunity that we're building and what keeps me being such a psychopath and excited to build all the time.
Yeah, that's as a user of Beehiiv, that's always been something that's stuck out to me that really is unique. No one else has anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny whenever people ask about like the Beehiiv story, they're like, oh, things must have changed so much. Like you must have had this. Like 'cause a lot of companies have like an initial thesis and then they like it gets validated or invalidated and then they pivot and then they pivot again. And they're like kind of figuring things out. Like when I called my co-founder Ben when I was in between jobs at Morning Brew and YouTube, I like pitched this vision of like, hey, like website, newsletter, ad network. And I think there's nothing like that on the market. And it's taken a lot of patience because like we've said that from day one. And like we didn't even start building we bought the website builder a year ago. And we didn't start building the ad network for like a year and a half into the business. So it's been a lot of patience and seeing this big picture of what this could be. And why I'm so excited today is like all three of those exist. And we're like at the very early stages of getting them off the ground. So it's been 3.5 years to get to this point. But I think the future is like much brighter than what we've already experienced.
Amazing. All right. That's a great note to end on. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I will link all of the handles to you and Beehiiv in the show notes. And of course, the plug for anyone who's listening is if you're not already signed up to Tyler's Big Desk Energy newsletter, you really need to, because it's a really great look at the behind the scenes, as we've already talked about, but it's also just really entertaining. So,
or the Spotify playlist if you need to listen to music while you're working.
Perfect. Yes. Can't forget that. So Tyler, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Social Currency. I've been wanting to launch this show for so long. I can't tell you how excited I am to do this and how thrilled I am that you're actually here listening. It means the world to me. If you liked what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast because it massively helps to support the work I do to bring the show to life. And if you want to keep up with the hottest business lore in real time, follow me on Instagram at Sammi Cohen Talks and subscribe to my newsletter, Social Currency, which is linked in the show notes. Social Currency is a production of Social Currency Media and Money News Network. The podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Sammi Cohen. Social Currency is produced by the Money News Network team. See you next time.